Open source, what does that even mean? I'm going to need my code for this. There we go, much better. The year is 1998. Armageddon is about to become my favorite movie of all time. Private Ryan is about to be saved, and Blade, nay, Wesley Snipes, is about to save the entire Marvel universe from obscurity. And actually, that is a fun story, but definitely not for this video. And on that beautiful January of 1998, a company called Netscape was making a big release of its browser, Netscape Navigator. Now, Netscape Navigator was one of those early popular browsers. They were literally about to head into the browser war with Internet Explorer. Also, a story for another day. But on that January, they made an interesting announcement. In fact, two interesting announcements. Announcement number one was they'll be releasing Netscape Navigator for free, and yes, that was a good thing. But the second announcement is what changed the face of software for a very, very long time to come. They will release the source code of the Netscape communicator for free. Now, realize releasing free software wasn't new. The free software movement had existed for quite a while. However, in an interesting twist, here they were going beyond the software. They were actually releasing the code that made the software work. And this took the free software movement by storm. And in reaction to that announcement, they needed to find a new way to describe this kind of software. Now, understand the word free in English is always tied to cost. When you say something is free, you're referring to the fact that generally you are acquiring it at no cost. And this does have an impact on any business decision or any business conversation that you're having. And now they had a new kind of freedom, and they needed to be able to describe it. One of them came up with the word open source, but not everybody was a fan of that. And so later that February in the Freeware Summit, two words were brought up. One was sourceware, and the second was open source, and developers were asked to cast their vote. And as you can probably guess, this video isn't called sourceware. Open source won. And that's where the word comes from. So now we know how open source software was born, or at least how the term open source came to be. Let's not forget that the spirit of open source existed before the term was even born, and it existed in the free software movement. And these were developers who were seeking to make software free to inspect, contribute, and modify. And so open source software as it currently stands is software whose source code you can inspect and change and adapt to suit a need, of course, bound by the license under which it is governed. And this is important. So why should you care? Open source software is all around us, from your mobile phone running Android. That is open source, to your television that's most likely running a variant of some Java program. That is also open source, to going as far as the International Space Station, which, while it doesn't run a classic computer, it actually runs something called a multiplexer, demultiplexer. Trust engineers to name their stuff really, really well. It's actually running on Ada, which is named after Ada Lovelace, one of the first, actually the first computer programmer. And she worked with Charles Babbage, who is considered the grandfather of computing, to actually change the world of computing. And so, female engineers, there you go. The first programmer ever was actually a woman. We need more women in tech, and if that isn't a clarion call to all women out there to start putting some code out there and changing the world, I do not know what is. And so, open source software is all around us. It runs the cars that we are putting on the roads right now. It runs our televisions. It runs the servers that we host on the cloud. As we speak, even for Microsoft, more than 55% of all the virtual machine cores that run on our cloud run Linux. The open source revolution isn't just happening, it's already here. And that's an amazing thing. And that's why you should care about open source, because developers out there are taking the time to build software and make it available to other developers. And what happens next is what makes open source software an amazing tool. Because developers are able to see, modify, and inspect the code, guess what? They can make it more secure. They can make it more reliable. They can adapt it to unique situations that an organization that was more closed source couldn't possibly even think about. As more and more tools are released, we get to see the creativity of developers coming in and changing and modifying software to make it better for the rest of the world. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is what open source software really is. It's about making software free for people to go in, look at, change, inspect, and modify. It's about limitless freedom. Linux, as a very good example, has over 12,000 contributors to just its kernel. And if that isn't a testament to what people can do when they come together, to the power of community, I do not know what is. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've learned something new, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, stay awesome.